Anyway, let me get to a couple of your questions that you wrote in. Melinda wrote in, my daughter says her new religion is love. How do I address this? Okay. Actually, that is the new religion of many people in America now, love. But what does love mean? So I would ask some questions. And using Greg Kokel's questions from Tactics are always very helpful. When somebody says my new religion is love, my first question is, what do you mean by that? First of all, what do you mean by religion? And what do you mean by love? What is love? How do you describe love? What is the definition of love? Find out what they mean by love, because too often what people mean by love is approval, that you just need to approve of everything. And as soon as you say you don't approve of everything, they don't approve of you. So they're not loving. We had a debate 2 years ago, myself and the great Dr. Michael Brown. We had a debate with a couple of LGBT activists at our seminary, Southern Evangelical Seminary. And the debate title was something like, does love require approval? And of course, they were trying to say yes, and we were trying to say no. And at one point in the debate, I turned to them and I said, do you love us? And they said, yes. And I said, do you approve of our position? And they said, no. I said, well, you just lost the debate then, because you're proving that you can love without approving of everything the other person thinks or does. And so love does not require approval. In fact, quite often, love often requires you not to approve and to stand in the way of evil. Every parent knows that if you tolerate everything your child wants to do, if you approve of everything your child wants to do, you're not loving, you're unloving. So I would, Melinda, I would ask your daughter, what is love? What does it mean? And the second question, after you ask what do you mean by that, how did you come to that conclusion? In other words, what evidence do you have that this is the true religion? Now, in any false belief, normally there's a big kernel of truth. And Christianity is a religion centered on love, the love of God for us who are unlovable because of our sin. Paul said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, very rarely will someone die for a righteous man, but who dies for an unrighteous man? While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Christ literally died, came to earth and took humanity on himself, lived the perfect life, and took our punishment on himself. So we wouldn't have to bear the brunt of God's justice. And God is just, so he has to punish sin. Instead of punishing us, he punishes himself. What love is better than that? Jesus famously said, there's no greater love than to die for your friends. How about there's no greater love than to die for your enemies? We're his enemies, and he died for us. So Christianity is centered on love, but not the squishy, no standard kind of love. That's not love at all. That's sentimentality. C.S. Lewis, and I'm paraphrasing him again, said something like this, we would like God to be a benevolent old man who just wants everybody to have a good time. He said, that's not God. A God that does not judge sin is not loving. A father that does not judge sin is not loving. In fact, God is a father. He's not a grandfather. He doesn't want to spoil us. He wants to mold us into himself. And that requires discipline. That requires saying no. That requires not approving everything, because it's a dangerous world out there. And if you approve of everything someone wants to do, you're not loving. You're an enabler. There's a difference between loving somebody and enabling them. So, Melinda, I would ask the question, what do you mean by that? How did you come to that conclusion? And then, of course, the third question is, have you ever considered that love does not mean approval? Oh, it might mean approval when somebody is doing something right and good, but it means disapproval when someone is doing something wrong and evil, and you have to do that. And if your child does not agree with this, yet she says she loves you, she's proving your point, not hers. So you may want to call her on that.